does family mean to you?
What does family mean to me? Family means everything, honestly. I come from a really large family, a really big family. I was raised by my mom and aunties and grandma, and grew up with all my cousins. We all grew up in a small house, and my grandma and grandpa raised 11 kids in that same house, a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom. So we're really close. And to me, family is like the support structure, the backbone, the foundation, the source of everything that I do. My family had to be close, and we had to work together on our ranch to make sure that everyone was fed, to make sure we had a roof over our table. We were growing up in one of the poorest counties, and I didn't see that at the time because my family didn't make it seem that way. We still loved each other, we still laughed, we still were happy, we still had good times. Not to say it wasn't without its struggles, but to me, family is the people that love you, and the people that are there for you whenever you fall flat on your face, and it seems like no one else is there for you. I know that if my career and everything that I do right now, if I completely failed and it all collapsed in and I didn't have anything, I could go back to my family and I would be okay.
Well, in the larger Muskogee picture of family, usually we talk about the clan system. So whatever clan you are is what your family is. That's who your family is. But we have all kinds of adopted family as well. And so I always think of family as the people that kind of come and go in your lives. So some people might be your family for a short time, and then they go on and you acquire a new family. And then people that are your genealogical kin are your family, but you can't ever get rid of them, but you might not be as tight with them as you are with folks that you take in as adoptees.
Family means a lot to me. It's really an interesting question, because family, from a traditional cultural perspective, we have ke, which is our familial relationships that's more identified as a clan system, but it's really our extended family, not just through blood, but through the clan identifications and how we're born into this world. So as Diné people, traditionally we introduce our 4 clans. We're a matrilineal society, so it comes from our mother's side, and in how I was raised, because on our mom's side, Biligana, or not native, Russian Polish in this case, and so my grandmother said that we should introduce ourselves from our father's side, and sort of adopted us under those terms. But essentially the clan system is really critical with the extended families, so that way nobody's ever homeless, nobody ever is abandoned or orphaned. There's always some kind of direct family that is related to that clan. So when you introduce your 4 clans, you can identify who your grandparents, your great-grandparents, like I could meet somebody who's much younger than me, and if they have the same clans as my father, they can be a direct relative that's sort of acknowledged like my elder or my grandparent. So it's a very complicated system, but it allows for a very strong extended family. So when you introduce yourself, you might meet a stranger, and you might find that you're related, and with that, traditionally you would greet them and you'd be treated the same way as somebody who's blood related. So it's very strong. It's something that helped historically to ensure that during the Long Walk, which is a very tragic time in 1864 to 1868, when Diné people were forced on the Long March and kept in a concentration camp called Fort Sumner in New Mexico. This is at a time of the colonizers coming in and waging war and trying to decimate our peoples. During this time, there's a lot of stories about how the clan extended family system helped to ensure that nobody was homeless and nobody was abandoned, nobody was by themselves to just fend for themselves. There's always that familial connection. So historically, family, is something broader than just what the typical sort of status quo American ideal of family. If you ever, you see the sitcoms that are on TV, whether it's a Cosby Show or Modern Family, or I hate to reference Cosby Show because he's, obviously very problematic. But there's a lot of this sort of idea of the nuclear family that was established in the 1950s, but that's completely, something that I don't relate to. So I think of a lot when I think of family. I don't think of just my immediate family. I also think of relationship to nature. Think of relationship to other beings. Like I was raised with horses, I was raised with sheep, I was raised with, cows and different animals. And so they have a different role, different relationship to them. Sometimes I would think of them like, as part of the family too, just the way that they were treated and, the way that you have to care for them. Not really the sheep because we eat them, and I don't necessarily would think I want to eat any of my family. Just kidding. Yeah, that's part of what I think about in family. It's very nuanced. It's very complicated.
To me, family means the people that you've known for a really long time, who knew you when you were little, who are biologically related to you, but not necessarily. They're just the people who are important to you in your life.
What does family mean? I feel really strongly about my family ties. I was raised by my grandparents. My parents split up when I was 14 months old, and my dad's mom and dad took me in to raise me, and I was surrounded by great aunts and uncles and cousins growing up, and so I think that even though a lot of those people have passed on, that notion of family that they taught me, that families spend time together and are supportive of each other no matter what, I think those really stuck with me. So I take that to what I do. When I teach, I really like it to be visiting. I don't like the model of a classroom where you've got a professor up at the front who's the expert and the students sitting back here waiting to receive all of this knowledge and wisdom from a professor. I learn from my students too. And by the end of a semester, they become family. And I tell them at the beginning of the semester, you're going to think I'm crazy, but by the end of the semester, we're going to love each other. And it's true. I think out of thousands of students, I've maybe had one or two that didn't become like family by the end of the semester. Because some people are just stubborn and mean. No matter what you do, it's going to happen. So my blood relatives are important to me. My relatives in Indian way are really important to me over the last 20 years or so of my life in particular. As I've been growing up and gone about the world, I've taken relationships with a lot of people across Indian country. So I've got Blackfoot relatives. I've got Cheyenne relatives. I've got Comanche relatives. I've got relatives in a lot of places, and those relationships and our church family are really important to me.
What does family mean to me? It's a big question. It's a real big question. Family means a lot of things. It means genealogy. It means who I'm connected to, where I descend from, not only who I just descend from, but where we come from. So one of the things that, like with Native people, a lot of times we ask each other where we're from as a way of understanding who we are. So family is a big part of that. And family is also connection to understand your identity, to understand yourself, support system, love, nurturing, who you sacrifice for, and probably who sacrifices for you. But it's a very large question. I'll think if I want to add to that.
Family means to me, I think of your given family, but I also think of your chosen family. I know as I've gotten older, I feel like I've made relationships who are not necessarily blood related, but we've become close and function like a family. And I think that's not so abnormal in terms of if we think of a lot of non-Western ideas of non-nuclear families. So like Charlie was saying, my family allows me to understand myself, who I am in terms of my responsibilities, kuleana, to the world and to my family and my community. So it gives me purpose, and at the same time, I think that's what drives me to do the work that I'm doing. So it's not just an academic exercise, but it's also like giving back what you can with the gifts that you have back to your family, whether that be your given family or your chosen family.
Mr. Redbird, my father, I watch you soar away. I wonder why you cannot stay. Why did you leave your family tree? Your mother and father, your sister and brother, your wife and me. Mama Bird has raised me since I was very small, and now I'm fully grown. Some day soon I'll soar the sky to find my way. If I see you, will you fly away?
About your relationship and your family.
What's my relationship with my family? I'm pretty close with my family, with both my mom and my dad. I'm close with both of them. Much more close with my mom than I am with my dad. I was raised by her for the most part and didn't live with my dad growing up, but I'm still close with him. And when I was a kid, I saw him pretty much every weekend. I'd go over and spend like Friday night at his house. So we have a bond, but it's not the same sort of bond that I have with my mom. And then extended family, my mother's sister, my aunt Billy, she was like a second mother for me. And so I had a really strong connection with her, and I learned a lot, specifically from her in how to treat other people, how to be respectful, how to be giving. She was very giving to pretty much anyone who needed anything. She was giving, and I try to be that way as much as I can, to give to others and not think of myself as much, but think of others. So my relationship with my family is one that's always, you're always wanting to sort of build on those relationships, and wish I had more time to spend with family, because with school and work and everything, sometimes that has priority over family. So making time for family, I think, is something that I would want to work on, and but it can be really hard to have that time.
My relationship with my family is pretty complicated. I have a twin sister who I'm close to. I have two nieces who I pretty much kind of see them as my children as well. My mom, I don't really have a speaking relationship with her at the moment, but I also understand that these relationships are very complicated due to trauma that my parents or my mom has experienced. And my father passed away about 4 years ago, and my mom raised me as a single parent, but we used to see him a lot on weekends. but I do have a relationship with my little brother and my stepmother. So that's why I think I was talking about chosen family as well, because even though I may not have like a close, tight-knit relationship to my mom, I feel like there's other people that have come into my life for specific reasons and can function as that nurturing person that I need at that moment. But I'm very close to my grandparents in Hawaii. I feel like I look up to them a lot in terms of understanding who I want to be as a person and the values that they have, and the sacrifices that they've made for their children and their grandchildren. So I think I always try to remember them. And like Charlie was saying, you know, there's been a lot of people, I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of people in my life, whether that's blood related or not, to pretty much show me different family structures and to care and love me at different periods of my life.
My dad and my stepmom are Church of Christ. My mom is apostolic, not even Pentecostal, apostolic. Women not cutting the hair, no jewelry, no makeup, women's dresses 6 inches below the knee, sleeves below the elbow. My grandma who raised me when I was little bitty, I guess the first church I ever went to was a Baptist church. And so I spent a lot of time in the Baptist church. And I guess I grew up with a lot of that, and then I went to Baylor. And to be really honest, Baylor for me was a big crisis of faith. I had never been around wealthy Christians. I'd only been in pretty much little country churches. I'd visited around here and there and been to some big churches, but I'd been around, I'd been in little, really poor country churches most of my life. And so going someplace where there were really wealthy Christians, and it really, I guess at the same time that I was learning about history and learning more about genocide and learning about the ways in which Christ's name had been used wrongly throughout that history, just presented me with a real big crisis. I can remember there was a fraternity that sponsored a $30,000 food fight when I was at Baylor. And this was in the 90s. But even then, $30,000 could have fed a whole lot of people for a really long time. So for them to waste $30,000 of food and to see all of the really, not just hedonistic behavior that happens in college. I mean, everybody knows that kids go to college and they party. That's going to happen. And there's going to be some bad stuff happen. But the lack of regard for other humans, the self-centeredness, the materialism, really got to me at a time period where I was also learning some of the really more horrific details of history. And so I got out of church for a number of years. I had been adopted by at the time, the oldest living Cheyenne medicine man, and I went straight traditional for about a decade. I went to sweats, I went to NAC meetings, I became active in Native American church, and really got away from Christianity. In fact, I would say 6 years ago, I wouldn't have told you I was a Christian. And then when I became friends with Rance, he had gone through some similar crises in faith about Christianity, and had found himself at a point where flat out he heard God talk to him. It was in a really bad space, and he said, why the holiness that there is, the mystery that there is, chose to manifest to him in that moment as Jesus. That really threw him, because it wasn't where he was coming from, but it brought him to church, and he began to talk to me about, he saw that my intellectualism was fighting with my faith. And he had gone through a similar struggle, and really through the way Comanches practice Native American church, which is very Christ-oriented, and I've seen other tribes become more Christ-oriented in their practice of Native church in the meantime, but at that time, say 15 years ago, you go to meetings in Oklahoma, you'd hear Jesus a lot more in Comanche meetings, hear the name Jesus, than Cheyennes would almost flat make fun of it. In fact, Grandpa did. All this Jesus talk, he'd get really aggravated when we'd go around and visit. But through that, came back to church, and then was blessed to find a church home here. Because not even all of our Indian Methodist churches in Oklahoma are as supportive necessarily of our Native spirituality on the church grounds. A lot of those people go to ceremonies, but we don't have those ceremonies on those church grounds. So I felt really blessed to find this space in Norman where, a lot of people here are educators, so we appreciate that intellectual approach to the Bible as well, right? We appreciate the thinking about it and the history of it. That's one of the things I love about your mom. I just do, and I did about Siobhan too, to have a pastor who's really educated in the history surrounding the Word and in the language, because anybody that studies native languages or any languages knows when you translate something, you are going to lose a lot. So to have someone who has that education and to have a congregation that's welcoming of hearing that history and hearing things about language, because I know when I read a book with my students, there's going to be things I know about that text that my students don't know, which is why they take classes in literature. I think I really appreciate that, and I really appreciate the way culture and Native spirituality are respected, and how we easily blend two things that are not that different. Indian ways and real Christianity are not at all incompatible. So I feel real blessed to have ended up here, and I think there's a lot of good work that can be done here.
So I have 2 children. My son's name is Nogozafanoki, and my daughter's name is Himoki. And I have a partner. Her name is Tana, and we have a good relationship. I enjoy my kids. My son is 3 years old, and my daughter's 1 year old, and we spend a lot of time trying to raise them to be good Muskogee people. So talking to them exclusively in our Muskogee language, and participating in ceremonial activities. I think it strengthens our relationship as a family, because we're doing the things that we need to do to carry on our cultural identity.
So the question is, what is my relationship with my family? With my direct family, it's a bit strained today, just because how there's a range of different challenges, and as you grow and you become your own person, you face different choices in your life, and sometimes your path goes in a different direction from your family. But I was raised to have a deep sense of respect and understanding for our cultural values and cultural practices. So my brother, my sister, and myself, and my father and my mom, we all work together. Like, it's as soon as what my mom and my dad say is that before I could walk, I was dancing, doing traditional dances, participating in ceremonies, and so forth. And so when we were growing up, my father is an entertainer. He would be traveling, and we were too little at the time to travel all over with him. So at one point, there's this funny story that my mom has about, she'd always ask my dad, when are you going to unpack your suitcase and stay home? And his response was, well, as soon as we got old enough, he didn't unpack his suitcase. We helped him pack, and we packed our suitcases, and we went on the road with him and traveled and performed and educated people. And so that's pretty much how I was raised. So our family was very close. We worked together. We had a band, Black Fire, for a number of years, about 20 years, that I started with my brother and sister when I was about 10 years old. So we worked very closely together, which sometimes can be a challenge. If you have a brother and sister, you know how to push each other's buttons, but you also know how to get along very well. So yeah, it's my relationship to family is very complicated. I also am married to my wonderful wife, Princess, who very much in the traditional way of being as a Diné male, a cisgendered identified male. When we're married, traditionally, we're brought into the wife's family because we're a matriarchal society. And so through the blessing and through the wedding ceremony, there's a process in a sort of procession where you're brought into that family and you're sort of given to that family. So I feel like very much that I've taken on that role in some ways. Although my mother-in-law doesn't make me work as much as she did when we were first married. But right now I'm really just committed to taking care of this sort of new family that I'm part of with my wife. And we have a crazy dog and a crazy hedgehog. So that's like our crazy little family right now, and wonderful family as well. So that's a long story, long sad stories too, but good stories because it makes you who you are. And that's something that my father's always said, and he's always, instructed me in a traditional way because he's a Hatathli or medicine practitioner, but he's always said that we're holy people. We are Noho Ka Diendene, which is the holy earth surface people. And so our mother and our father, they give us life together. When we come into this world, we have to honor, respect, and cherish that. And it's something that's very powerful because his translation of Noho Ka Diendene, holy earth surface people, is like we're angels and we're spiritual beings. And we have to cherish that. We have to honor and respect the life that has been given to us through our ancestry. And so we carry that responsibility forward. So I always reflect on that. I think very seriously about that and all the lessons that I have and responsibilities with that as well. So I try to make sure I'm the best person I can be every day. When I wake up, I think about who is the best person I can be? How can I be the best person I can be for my wife and for that small new family that I have?
My relationship with my family? Mm-hmm. My relationship is one of, it's almost like a little community, I feel like for me, I look at my family as like a microcosm of my tribe. And then outside of that, I look at all Lakotas as my family as well. But speaking in both of those contexts, my relationship with my family is one of a son, first and foremost, a grandson, a nephew, and more recently an uncle, a cousin. Because I don't have kids of my own yet, but my cousins that are my age are having kids now, so I'm becoming Uncle Frank, which I think I'll stay Uncle Frank for a while. But within that, for me, is responsibility, responsibility to take care of the people that I love and to provide for the people that I love in whatever that may be, in whatever sense that may be, in whatever they need, and to hopefully make our world a better place for the ones that are going to come after me in my family, my nieces and my nephews and my little cousins. People ask me all the time what my biggest inspiration is and what my hope is, and honestly, it's my family. To one day make this place a better place for my little cousins, and hopefully they don't have to go through the things that I had to go through to get to where I'm at. My relationship with my family is I often live far away from them. My mom's side of the family lives in Hawaii and my dad's side lives in Kentucky. But I try to keep in touch with them. I call on the phone or on email, and I try to go visit when I can. And try to support each other however we can.
Mr. Redbird, my father, I watch you soar away. I wonder why you cannot stay. Why did you leave your family tree? Your mother and father, your sister and brother, your wife and me. Mama bird has raised me since I was very small, and now I'm fully grown. Some days soon I'll soar the sky to find my way. If I see you, will you fly away?
Father helps for the family in the future.
So what are my hopes for my family? That's a really interesting question. I think a lot about the pain and the suffering and the injustice that exists in this world that is dominated by heteropatriarchy, capitalism, white supremacy, and colonization. I think a lot about the impacts in a broader sense of community, but also how that directly impacts my family and my desire for a healthy and more just world. So my hopes are that my family can enjoy liberation from this oppressive, dominant society. My hopes are that we can live in a free world where we're not persecuted for our cultural beliefs, where our sacred sites aren't continuing to be desecrated. My hopes are that we can have young people be in this world free from those forms of oppression. So that's something that I constantly pray for, and that intention is really my hope. Sometimes it's hard just to hope for things. That's why I choose to be an activist or a caretaker or healer in this world that puts myself in the way, of those kinds of harm. I decide to take action, and I organize. I try to find creative ways to intervene or interrupt or disrupt these systems of oppression to make this world a better place. So sometimes hope isn't just enough, and I try to put that action component and pair that with the desires and aspirations that I have. So my hope, to summarize, is for a healthy, just, sustainable, and sane world where we can continue in cultural survival and vitality to thrive for future generations.
I hope, though, that my kids will be able to embody our traditional Muskogee teachings, and especially the language. I want to make sure that they have the gift of language, and I think that the language carries our traditional values, and that as long as they stay close to our language and our ceremonial beliefs, that they'll have good things to pass on to their children and their grandchildren.
What are my hopes for my family? My hopes are that my family, one day, all of us, we all realize and we will be happy, healthy, and respected. That's like the foundation of what I do as an artist, and also my artist statement in the core of my work is that I just want to see a day where me and everyone I love, including my family and including my tribe, because like I said, I consider my tribe my family as well, my community my family, where we are happy, healthy, and respected. And we realize that within ourselves, and people outside of our community realize that as well. And yeah, and also that my nieces and nephews and one day kids and the next generations of my family can be happy, healthy, respected, and successful at whatever they love to do. And if they don't want to leave home, they don't have to, because I had to leave home to become a successful artist, which was unfair, I think. So one of my biggest dreams or issues that I want to overcome is how do I bring opportunities home, because now I have a lot of opportunities as an artist and I have this platform, and how will I one day leverage that to bring some of that home, so that the people in my family and my tribe coming up after me, if they don't want to leave home, they don't have to be happy, healthy, respected, and successful.
My hopes for my family in the future are I hope they could all find healing, and I hope that they can get whatever they desire, and find people who support them in doing that. I hope for my family in Hawaii in particular, I hope we'll always have someone that lives in Hawaii so we can all go back and visit and keep a connection to the land where our family comes from.
I would like to have children of my own. I'd really like to sort of form my own family and still have connecting bonds to the family that I grew up with, but beginning my own family and having children and really being able to raise children to reflect the values that I grew up with, but to have more access to a lot of things that I didn't have growing up with. Some of that's material, but also access to culture, language, more access to the lands that my dad's side of the family calls home, and be able to explore and know those things from young instead of having to sort of fight and struggle to learn those things. So access, I think, is a big thing for what I see in the future for my family, not only sort of nuclear family, but extended family, how we can have more access to both material things, but also culture and knowledge.
Hopes for my family are that people are just happy. I think like Charlie was saying that I go usually back to Hawaii every summer, and every time I go back I always feel like I'm kind of making a mistake by coming back to California, because it just feels like I should be there, and every time I go I feel that way when I'm leaving, like there's a huge regret. So I would actually like to be back in Hawaii and have access to be there with my family, with a lot of my extended family, and be able to do the things that make me happy, which is along the lines of like doing Hawaiian medicine, having access to language, like Charlie was saying, and just doing the things that, you know, kind of make me happy. So, but I also like to say that I've been thinking about this for a while, and people think that I'm just like crazy. But I would love to buy a big piece of property and just have multiple people living on the property, and people just help raise each other's kids, and have different roles and functions. And those people that I really love and trust, I have been talking about it for a while, but they just think that I'm making some stuff up. But that's actually what I would love to do, is have a lot of people who have their space but also can function to help one another out, and provide love for all these children that we hope to raise together.
I think you're talking about one of my hopes for my family in the future. I'm feeling really good right now. We just got blessed to move into a new home that we're renting, a different space, and it's amazing how when you walk into certain spaces, some spaces feel good and some spaces feel negative, and this feels like a really positive space. And so I'm feeling hopeful as Rance continues to go through his education. He's moving towards getting a master's in legal studies and his Juris Doctorate and becoming a lawyer, because he wants to look after Indian people and natural resource rights. And the girls are getting older, so there's all those sorts of things. We've got Nia and Marley going through school and going to be completing high school in a few years, and Rachel, who will probably always live at home. There's times where she definitely doesn't want to, and maybe I'm a smother mother when it comes to my differently abled daughter. So I mean, there's those kinds of sort of the same material goals and concerns that people have in terms of having a nice home for their family, and a place where they can visit with friends and relatives, and watching our daughters go through these little stages of life. But I guess for one, my real hopes are that we are we're able to serve God and to do good for other people in what we do. Whatever it is anybody chooses for a career, whatever the girls do in their lives, whatever Rance and I do, I'm hoping that we're doing that in service of God. And I guess I've also learned in the last 6 years, because I'm 46 now, you never know what's going to happen. There are no guarantees on anything at all. And so I've really learned to take life a minute at a time, because we do not know what's going to happen next. So I guess my real hopes are that I may continue to grow more easy with leaving things up to God and just handling whatever it is that He brings me next, whatever the work is next He has for me to do.
Yate kona yata